Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be able to join you this morning for session 2.1, focused on science cooperation and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. My name is Declan Curran. I'm the chairman of ISC here in Brussels. I'm also the chair of the Science Summit at the United Nations General Assembly, which is the annual conference promoting science at the level of the UNGA, which is an annual event taking place in September. And with that in mind, we this morning will listen to a range of esteemed speakers, and we will try to understand this process a little better. And the reason we want to do that is because the United Nations SDGs and the related Agenda 2030 process provides a very, and in my view, extremely eloquent narrative on how we address global common challenges. And within that, we need to increase the awareness of the contribution of science to delivering the SDGs in a process and procedural way. And for this to happen, there needs to be a greater enabling policy and regulatory environment for science and other things as well, including partnering mechanisms and funding. So this is a very, very important discussion today. And as I address different fora, I make the point that the focus for this conference is, of course, with the Arab region, and later on in January we will have a meeting with our African partners. But in all of these, I point to a very strong foundation of a global context. And although we look at things in a national and regional context, it's by cooperation at global level that we can really achieve success. But that's not simple, but I do feel the tools and the necessary instruments are at our disposal. So I think then I'd encourage our speakers this morning to bear this, if you like, simple message in mind, the contribution of science to the SDGs, and I think this will help us work together in a collaborative sense. Also worth bearing in mind is the United Nations Local 2030 process, which is an initiative led by the United Nations Development Programme to localize the SDGs. Now, while this might be difficult to sometimes turn into reality, I think the principle is hugely important. And we should bear this in mind as we talk about global initiatives, and that is how to involve local constituencies, local communities to translate their efforts to be part of a global push. And of course, I think this recognizes the way society is structured in any case. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you very much, Dr. Torman, for organizing this very, very impressive meeting, this range of sessions, which I hope will do many things, but I think it will really advance our collaboration, bring us together, and help us understand different communities, different regions in a way that then enables this more extensive cooperation, this wider cooperation, and the ability to exchange knowledge, to exchange know-how, to exchange data, and to work together with a common purpose. So with that said, I would now like to welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Mohammad Harzalah, founding director at the Palestinian Neuroscience Initiative at Al-Quds University in Palestine. Professor Mohammad, the screen is yours.
Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here and to take part in this distinguished panel. And I'm actually here to tell you a little bit of a small story about an endeavor that basically embodies some of these SDGs that you referred to, and ultimately try to put them into action, into use, while we're trying to build capacity and infrastructure and invest in what really matters, which is the human. And I call it building brains in Palestine. We're not actually assembling brains in Palestine, but basically it's more of a metaphorical reference to what we try to do there in terms of investing in neuroscience research. And I'll refer to exactly what we do there and how we do it and what we expect to accomplish, hopefully. Just before I start, and going back to the point that you alluded to, we will be addressing the SDGs, and these are a few of the SDGs that I'm going to be talking about during my talk, and would love to follow up on that as soon as we can actually discuss. So, as the title indicates, I come from Palestine, and again, I always ask myself, where is Palestine? And in lieu of the current political situation, the current geopolitical situation, I always find myself lost answering that question from the perspective of facts on the ground. However, I would like to refer or to borrow some logic from the late but still very elegantly brilliant Edward Said, who actually authored a very important book in the history of Palestine. He calls the Question of Palestine. And for me today, the question of Palestine, sadly, is still a question. And actually, it resonates with a lot of realities. It resonates with a dire state of justice and equality, peace and strong institutions, a dire state of that, a dire state of health and well-being, and a dire state of education. And last but not least, a dire state of innovation and infrastructure. So basically, it's the antithesis of any of the SDGs I mentioned earlier. Some people would think about this as an absolute disaster in the context of politics, economy, healthcare, and education. But personally, I like to take an inverse approach here and think about these as opportunities. I mean, yes, we basically have very little there in Palestine, but we have very much to build and very much to look forward to, which is not always a bad thing. And based on this kind of logic, or inverse logic, if I may call it, it might be actually really beneficial to think about what kind of approach would actually allow us to not just look at things face to face and try to encounter all of these problems, but look at them, and again, I'm borrowing logic from John Kay, an economist, obliquely. How can I, as an individual, as one person, apolitical, not involved in government, what can I do as an individual Palestinian who wants to help, who wants to be there, who wants to be a building block in Palestine, for Palestinians? So here are a few, heuristics, if I may call them. And I borrow this term from mathematics, and these are basically rules of thumb that I'll be focusing on. And we have been developing using literally trial and error, and like following their very, very different paths of randomness, literally, in order to try to develop what works. The most important aspect of everything that we did over the past years is always focusing on people. These are our biggest and greatest asset, and we literally invest in the human. We start here, we end here. We try to focus on problems that actually concern the local society and has generalizable effects internationally. It has to be multidimensional and multi-layered. And like everything else in our life these days, actually almost everything is multidimensional and multi-layered. We start in a bottom-up approach rather than a top-down approach. We start with the unit and go to the system, like as opposed to the inverse or the opposite directionality, because we want to build a very solid basis. We want to be very pragmatic. We don't want to be sentimental. We don't want to be emotional. I mean, the right amount only. And we want to be oblique. And the solution should be bringing something new, disruptive, and undoubtedly sustainable. So can we take this logic and apply it to an existing problem in Palestine? Since an early age in Palestine, I was abhorred, literally. I had significant abhorrence to politics and political problems because it was by all means a vicious cycle or circle, whatever you want to call it. And over the past 73 years, I don't know where we got there in this kind of regard. So I decided to focus on a less complex problems, for me at least, a thought for me, which is the human brain. And this takes me to another really major problem in Palestine. So putting a little bit, if you allow me, the political situation just a little bit aside, and the political problems, not saying that actually all of these problems don't interact with each other, or quite the contrary, actually. We learned a lot about what this means in the context of complex systems and complex interactions and dynamical systems. But still, let me look, just allow me to narrow my focus and narrow my lens here just to look at the brain particularly. Sadly, and unfortunately, Palestine tops the countries of Western Asia when it comes to mental health problems. It's not just about the prevalence of mental disorders and the prevalence of stress and anxiety. It is also compacted or impacted by a significant level of social stigma, where patients and their families, they don't want to talk about the problem. Even families sometimes disown members that have mental health problems. And it's further compounded by very few healthcare professionals. If I did the counting correctly, we have 25 psychiatrists between the West Bank and Gaza, serving a population of almost 5 million people. Only 3 women psychiatrists, not a single board-certified child psychiatrist for a population 65% of which is under the age of 24. It doesn't stop here. It's compounded further by problems in mental power in Palestine, which reflects in the reality that we have very minimal biomedical research or like the ability to basically answer any questions about us, about ourselves, about what works for us in Palestine, for Palestine, and a huge brain drain. Talk to any, almost any, let me say, young Palestinian, there are no opportunities. There's no horizon, unfortunately. But again, as I started earlier, I don't look at these things as negativities. Actually, we try to capitalize on the negativity and think about it as stoic, in terms of the philosophical school of Stoicism, where we look fate in the eye and tell it, bring it on. So we use these, if I may call them, 4 pillars, starting with people, ending with people, and focusing on research, infrastructure, and education. And this all happens in the beating heart of Palestine, in Jerusalem at Al-Quds University. In 2009, we started the Palestinian Neuroscience Initiative as a very small first step in order to build infrastructure for neuroscience research, to support education, and to feed back into helping the people and investing back in the people in the form of students, researchers, biomedical professionals, and then ultimately patients. 12 years forward, the Palestinian Neuroscience Initiative has 6 research units focusing on various disciplines of neuroscience, all based in Palestine, done by Palestinians, and carried out on Palestinian problems, trying to address science in Palestine, not necessarily Palestinian science. And there is a huge difference between both, because the first is going to address a problem that could be easily generalizable to the rest of the world. We don't stop at the basic science level. We take all of these disciplines and we apply them back to the patient, back to mental health, to depression, to post-traumatic stress disorder, to ADHD in kids and adults, to Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, in the discipline of neurology, to schizophrenia. And we not only focus on this, but we leverage our love and appreciation of mathematics and statistics and networks, and we try to understand the interaction of each of these with each of the basic disciplines in science, in neuroscience in this particular component. And we try to understand as well how these different disorders, so-called disorders, talk to each other, and how these different disciplines talk to each other, and we try to demolish boundaries. Metaphorically speaking again here, but later this actually has led to significant scientific advances in our understanding of many of these disciplines in Palestine. In 2017, we held this conference, and it's a great pleasure to be amongst this group, actually, of motivated young researchers, women and men, actually. And I honor myself that actually we maintained at least at its lowest level 60% women researchers at the Palestinian Neuroscience Initiative since its inception in 2009. Over the past 12 years, we managed to publish 9 research papers in peer-reviewed journals, 50 conference presentations. We have managed to train 250 researchers and students across all Palestinian universities in the West Bank and recently in Gaza. We managed to bring in $2.5 million in research funding to Palestine for research to be done in Palestine. 17 of the 250 are pursuing postgraduate degrees, PhD, post-PhD, clinical specialties. We sent 40 of our students to exchange programs in top institutions worldwide in Europe and the US. We received 30 visiting scientists, including many Nobel laureates at Al-Quds University. We held 10 symposia. We have 10 ongoing research collaborations. We collaborate with scientists at the top institutions in the world. They're not just interested in us because we're Palestinian or we do research in Palestine and because of their, willingness and their good hearts of supporting people like us. But they are interested in the science. They're interested in the opportunity that this actually brings to the table in terms of development and in terms of research that is otherwise not doable in the countries that host these institutions. This is one of my least favorite slides in this show, actually, and the reason is it's not that I hate media. Quite the contrary, I think media plays a very important role. But as you can see, all of this media is in English about what we do in Palestine. Very, very, very few Arab media outlets actually even cared to talk about what we do there and what we try to accomplish over the past 12 years. They had a lot of time to learn about us, but unfortunately, so far, the outcome is very, very, very dire. It was covered in Nature. It was covered in TED conferences. It was covered in Science Magazine, Arabian Business, International Brain Research Organization, and so on and so forth. So many different stories about what was going on there. I would like to take this opportunity also to thank and to acknowledge these amazing people. These people actually made it possible because, this kind of cycle of innovation does not continue or is not ever complete without people who would believe in the idea and who would have what philosophers call doxastic commitment, faith in what actually this means and what this could actually translate into later to the community, not just in Palestine, in Jordan, in Syria, across the divide in the Arab region as well. And I would like to actually mention them by name. Mr. Saad Mashar, the late Mr. Samih Darwazi, Mr. Saeed Darwazi, Mr. Fadi Ghandour, Mr. Ghayath Sikhtian, Mr. Tariq Al-Aqad, the National Institutes of Health in the United States of America, the International Brain Research Organization, Hekma Pharmaceuticals, Aramex, GMS Holdings, APIC. They were amazing mentors along the way, not just in terms of supporting the effort, but also to take that effort into the next level to make sure that actually the social and the impact on the people is always the focus and at the heart of everything that we do, and to remind us why we're here. So with these people, it's always possible. So over the past 10 years, we focused on infrastructure, research, and to a little bit education with people at the heart of it. And this took us 10 years actually to kind of build the very, very, very basic foundations there. And I'm not doing that we did a lot. We just did the very bare minimum in order for this to actually be viable, at least I think. Over the next 10 years, we will even go further toward the people. But in this kind of context, toward applications, toward tools, toward utilities. I'm an academic. I've spent the past 18 years in academia, and I think I'll continue for the rest of my life being a scientist, whereas actually there is a difference between being a scholar and a scientist and an academic, at least I think. But still, this actually indicates that there are always pros and cons for any system that we follow in this kind of regard. So from now on, we will actually be not just doing the research and the infrastructure and education, but we'll be focusing on deliverable tools. What can the research and the infrastructure and the education bring back to the people, bring back to the clinic? And in collaboration with APIC and Mr. Tariq Al-Aqad, we actually launched the 2030 vision of mental well-being in Palestine. In a nutshell, this program aims to bring all of mental health services, as much as we can, online over the next 20 years. It will actually raise awareness, it will bring research, and supposedly and hopefully in 10 years, we'll be able to actually support well-being in Palestine using a system that would support screening, triage, and referral. We also are trying to build capacity for some advanced tools in the field of neurology. This is another example over the next 10 years, actually, to bring deep brain stimulation for patients with Parkinson's disease and patients with other psychiatric manifestations. Alpha Omega, which is, by the way, founded by Palestinians from Nazareth. It's the largest company worldwide for the fabrication and the manufacturing of deep brain stimulation stimulators. And ultimately, we're collaborating with them, Mrs. Reem and Mr. Ahmad Yunus, in order to actually bring this technology to Palestinian hospitals at this point. Patients with Parkinson's disease have no treatment after pharmacological agents fail. So it's all about infrastructure, but bringing that infrastructure and creating these opportunities for research while we serve the people by building this capacity in order to go back to the people. We really care about what people know and learn about in terms of neuroscience and the brain. And therefore, we launched in collaboration with IDRAK, one of the institutions at the Queen Rania Foundation, in order to actually present neuroscience in Arabic, in order to actually present it to the general public and teach people about the brain. And ultimately, it will be followed by many other courses in Arabic, very simplified, very basic, in order to, get people to familiarize themselves with these particular terms that are related to the brain, mental health, well-being, and happiness. We did some social media campaigning in terms of, some psychiatric manifestations, some neurological manifestations, COVID-related aspects. And this is my favorite, actually, when I was invited by His Excellency, the Minister of Education in Palestine, to give a talk to school kids about neuroscience and about how can we move from the neuron to cognition to mental ill health. And it was a treat, by all means, to actually get to speak to these youngsters and to actually see the energy, the amount of energy that I hope that we actually can capitalize and build on, because this is our best asset. This is our aim for the next 10 years. And I would like to actually use this opportunity to call on collaborations and to call on people who want to put their hands together with us, to build capacity and to answer the question of Palestine. And not just Palestine, but also Jordan and Syria and Egypt and Lebanon and all other countries in the Arab region that would actually, could potentially collaborate with us. And we would love to share our stories and our heuristics and our plans and our ideas about how to build this capacity. And I would like to finally ask for the forgiveness of Edward Said, because I don't think it's a question of Palestine. It's rather a vision at this point. And a vision to make sure that Palestine is on the map. Palestine is always on the map, but basically make it on the map, put it on the map by accomplishments and by positive heuristics and by positive reinforcers, if I may say, that actually reflects the contribution of Palestine to the well-being of not just Palestinians, but humans worldwide. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Professor Harzalah, for that fascinating survey. And indeed, as I think you are showing, at least to my mind, is the importance of this wider global connected research environment. And I'd encourage you to perhaps consider how best to present your work as part of a global initiative at the UN General Assembly in September next year as part of the Science Summit. But really, congratulations to your incredible initiatives and capacity to advance a critically important area of health and healthcare delivery in straitened circumstances. Thank you indeed. I would now like to turn to Professor Haider Farihat, Senior Innovation and Technology Advisor at the UN ESQA in Lebanon, who will address us on the topic of the role of the UN in advancing infrastructure of STI. Dr. Farihat, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Declan and everybody, and thanks to Mohammad Harzalah for the great presentation. I may relate to that right away that he and we don't know each other, but we both have Rutgers University in common, as I studied part of my PhD program some 33 years ago in there. So I am very happy to be here, and yeah, my presentation, I will try to make it short, and I will do it on a PowerPoint style, if I may. I hope now you can see the presentation right now. Hello?
Loud and clear. Professor Farihat, do you hear me?
I have the feeling he's left the room.
Must have done. We'll give him just a couple of minutes to try and re-establish. Otherwise, we might go to you, Dr. Torman. Let's give him a couple more seconds.
Yeah, I would prefer to give him some seconds, 1 minute or so, because he has to leave
Sure.
For another conference. Actually, there is another conference in the Arab region at the same time. It's Arab Regional Forum on Digital Transformation, which is exactly the same time and so on. So that's also organized by ISQA, his organization. So it's better to see if we can wait. Meanwhile, to comment on Mohammad's presentation, which I really admire, and thank you, Mohammed, for this wonderful and Palestine. The question of Palestine is on the map. Yes, it's on the map. You are putting people like you are putting Palestine on the map again. Physically, it's on the map. We no doubt. Nothing is. We are not going to interfere with politics and so on, but Palestine is on the map since the earth was there, and now we are putting like people like you are putting Palestine on the map in terms of research, in terms of innovation, in terms of and we at ASREN look forward to support Palestine in terms of connectivity and infrastructure and further to open science and so on. I'm not sure about Haider.
Sorry.
Here he is.
Yeah, here.
Yeah. I was disconnected for some reason. I don't know what it is. Sorry. Let me try to reshare now and see. Here you go. Okay, please click to preview. Okay, can you see the presentation right now?
Yes, we can, but if you can take it into full screen, it will be better.
Let me do it now. Let me try to take it to full screen. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will try to not to tax you for the 2 minutes delay because of this cut. I will present on the role of science, technology, and innovation in sustainable development and the role of the United Nations organizations in advancing STI. STI, well, I'll be talking about STI, science, technology, and innovation, because in the United Nations, this is like a reserved term, STI. We look at science, technology, and innovation in one bundle, although, of course, they are very much different than each other. But we for the purpose of this presentation and the purpose of the UN jargon, we look at them as one thing. I will talk about the partnerships with the SDG platforms, Sustainable Development Initiatives, what are they? And I'll bring some examples. As you know, there are 6 key areas that the UN focus on, which is people, dignity, prosperity, justice, partnership, and planet. There are 17 development goals. They have 169 targets and 232 indicators. In the area of STI to have more utilization of technology and innovation, to strengthen corporate governance and procedures, to leverage the young workforce, which is a specialty in the Arab world, women empowerment, and strengthening the middle class. These are the goals that we are all familiar with. Now we are 6 years or almost 7 years or halfway through the implementation of SDGs. STI basically, well, the UN has developed certain tools to deal with STI. The first one was 2015 in a conference in Addis Ababa. It's called Addis Ababa Action Agenda, AAAA. And one of the spin-offs of that Quad A is the Technology Facilitation Mechanism, which also had a spin-off of itself called STIF, or Science, Technology, and Innovation Forum, which is a forum that has been conducted yearly in New York since 2017. Of course, we skipped 1 or 2 years because of COVID, but we have the STI forum. Another spin-off is called the Interagency Task Team on Technology for the SDGs, which has about 15 UN organizations working together in a task force in order to help utilize STI for implementing SDGs. The STI basically forum, it involves all stakeholders. ESCWA is a member there. We are an observer member. We go there every year. We bring the story of science, technology, and innovation of the Arab region to the United Nations platforms. And the objective is to identify technological needs and gaps and utilize STI to achieve the SDGs. Now, we have looked at the technology gaps, which is a reality between countries and regions and must be reduced through national plans. We all know the literacy gap, the ICT gap, the connectivity gap, the technology gap, the knowledge gap, and so on. These are the digital divide gap. So these are divides that the UN is working on to bridge in order to help achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the requirement of STI, a good STI plan, is the need to harmonize with national sectoral plans, because we have noticed that there are many slogans. People, especially top government officials, top country leaders, they basically, whenever they talk about science or technology or innovation, their talk is mostly can be framed as slogans and propaganda, if I may use the term, rather than translating that into a practical budget-based, budget-supported plans that has targets and KPIs that need to be implemented. So another requirement is to have flexibility and inclusiveness, because we don't want any STI development in countries to be for the elite or for a certain group of people, or for those who just know one language, or for those who have the ability to get foreign education, and so on. So we want more inclusiveness in the plans and in the road to more STI. Provide scientific advice to institutions, rely on them in making policy decisions. I will talk about this later. And provide platforms to knowledge sharing, which also I will bring some examples of these platforms. Now, the partnerships in the UN basically is United Nations version. The initial version was launched in the UN Sustainable Development Summit 2015. Then DESA, basically, which is the Department of Economic and Social Affairs in the United Nations, started to lead that process beginning 2015. And then later on, more and more buy-in from other UN organizations joined the wagon of how to advance STI for SDGs and for development. Well, for the sake of time, I will skip this one and go directly to the initiatives. We have, starting, let's say, 2017, 2018, the UN has sent an initiative to collect all initiatives in the world. This is before COVID, like 2 years before COVID, and we developed a platform to collect initiatives on how to achieve all of the 17 goals. We managed, as UN, to collect 6,975 initiatives. These initiatives basically are distributed on all of the goals. As you can see, goal 14 had the lion's share, also goal 13, goal 1, which is poverty, goal 8. So with a couple of exceptions, each of the goals has its own fair share of the global initiatives. These initiatives were collected from the governments, the NGOs, the private sector, even individuals. We have collected that. One of the purposes to collect these initiatives basically is to, first of all, to have awareness that each one in the world will be able to know that the initiative they are working on or they are thinking about is not duplicated, that no one else is doing the same thing in other parts of the world. At the same time, if someone is doing a similar initiative in another part of the world, there will be a chance for them to network, to connect, to discuss, to merge efforts, to synergize, and so on. These initiatives, also, we have mapped them on the Arab countries. We have noticed that out of the 6,000 plus initiatives, 222 initiatives came from the Arab countries. And when we map them on countries, we found that Egypt has a lion's share of 34. We have Jordan 15. We have UAE 25, Tunisia 23. And we have some modest countries like Bahrain has 3. And let's say Palestine has 3, Qatar has 4, which is alarming for a country like Qatar. Also, we map these initiatives on the topics, poverty, hunger, health, education, and so on. Okay, and these are like percentages. Again, the lion's share is on energy, which is goal 7. And also on partnerships, which is goal 17. Okay, we noticed that SDG 10, which is on inequality, has the least number of initiatives. Now, this is like for the Arab countries. Okay, sustainable. This is like distribution of initiatives based on SDGs in the Arab countries. Okay, and here we have, out of this 222 Arab initiatives, we zoomed in, we drilled down to the STI related initiatives. And out of the 222, we found that 122 that are technology related or science related or innovation related initiatives, which is like 55% of all initiatives are STI related. And also for the STI, we noticed that goal 17 has the highest and goal 10 has the lowest. Now, this is the STI distribution of initiatives for the Arab countries. This is not very informative. It's missing one label here. And we have the distribution of all initiatives and STI initiatives. If you can see, for example, goal 7, we have as many STI initiatives as other initiatives. But like for goal 14, we have, let's say, a limited number of initiatives in STI compared with the total number of initiatives for goal 14. My quick presentation, I want to talk about some examples in the Arab world of these initiatives. For example, we have global initiatives and Arab initiatives. In the global initiatives, I have the one initiative was to create a one-stop shop to establish a sustainable development initiative. It has its own objectives, targets, and development goals. Each one of the initiatives listed in the platform has a profile of itself where it has the objective, the targets, and what development goals they are targeting. Another one was to provide access to and use of intellectual property information through intellectual property institutions and individuals to promote innovation initiatives. So we have this important one. This is my favorite. I think it's very important. The philosophy behind this initiative is basically to widen, to have an open access to the use of IP instead of a closed access. Now, at the ESCWA level, or the Arab regions level, we have also examples. One of them is the technology transfer offices in the Arab countries. We have established 12 national technology transfer offices in 12 Arab countries. The philosophy TTOs, National Technology Transfer Offices, is to have an ecosystem, a national ecosystem of all organizations working in the country in STI, whether they are universities or science-based organizations, whether they are science parks, whether they are private sector laboratories, and so on. We asked them to sit together in about 4 workshops to agree on distributing the division of labor and to agree on a focal point, a national focal point. Our project, this has been accomplished. Our project is to complete the remaining countries, to have NTTOs for them, and to create an Arab-wide regional technology transfer office that will coordinate the efforts at the national level. The other example, we have the Middle East and North Africa Innovation Scoreboard Initiative. We have established this initiative, but unfortunately, it lost momentum after some time. The objective was to basically to have a dashboard where everyone can look at progress in STI initiatives. Also, we have established an ICT Academy for development of government sector leaders in the Arab states, where basically the objective was to increase awareness in the Arab policymakers on how they can use STI to induce development. If you talk to any policymaker, or most of them, they will look about how the agriculture sector, how the mining sector, how the tourist sector, and the traditional sectors, how they can contribute to GDP and growth. But this is like an effort to tell them that even science, even technology, even innovation, even inventions can be one important tool to induce economic and social development and growth. We have another initiative, is the Arab Internet Governance Forum, because we believe that the internet is is a good platform, not an excellent platform, but a good platform for to help science, to help technology, to help innovation, especially young innovators, young scientists, and so on. They can start from the internet. So we have a huge effort. In fact, this week we have an Arab Internet Governance Forum held virtually here from Beirut. And also we have an initiative to use emerging technologies, trends, and government services in the Arab countries. And government services means e-government services. So also we think that e-government services, which has advanced very much during COVID, that we think it's a good platform to advance science interaction. Finally, a final slide here about recommendations to encourage government to provide and the private sector and non-government sectors in the Arab countries to propose initiatives, more and more initiatives, to visit that platform and compare their initiatives, promote new initiatives, to analyze and draw lessons of existing global level initiatives, and to stimulate international cooperation and partnerships. Because as we all know, science, technology, and innovation is something you cannot do in closed doors. You have to cooperate nationally, regionally, and internationally in order to advance it, because science is, after all, cumulative and shareable, and this is a very important thing. The partnership and the cooperation is very important. And finally, to visit the initiative's website that I will share with you. This presentation is shared with you, and with this I end my presentation. Thank you very much. Before I finish, let me see how this thing, I hope I'm not okay here. Before I finish, I may regretfully I have to be after 5 minutes in another event that will be attended by about 500 people that I need to be there. I apologize for that.
Thank you very much, Dr. Frahat, and thank you for taking the time out of your other busy engagements to be with us this morning, and thank you for sharing such a valuable amount of insights into the role of the United Nations in advancing e-infrastructure on STI. And as you presented, I am reminded of the United Nations roadmap for digital cooperation, which I believe is coordinated by the ITU, but launched by the Secretary General, I believe approximately 2 years ago. And again, this is a wonderful instrument and wonderful roadmap for cooperation. However, it does help me to reflect on a number of aspects, which I think in my engagement with the United Nations, I've come to realize a couple of things. And again, cooperation with the United Nations is something I really want to and have been driving. I'm a great supporter. I think the United Nations is a hugely valuable platform. However, what you do realize, or I have anyway, is that the United Nations does many, many, many good things, but some things it cannot do. So the United Nations cannot legislate. The United Nations cannot regulate. And in many areas, the United Nations doesn't fund. And again, that's a generalization. It does fund, of course, a lot of humanitarian programs, all the rest of it. But broadly speaking, this is a generalization. It doesn't fund sort of operational science activities apart from the study type stuff. So again, I present that in a very positive way, in that it does then provide a huge forum for additionally engaging with states to look at how you advance this very fragmented world, and ultimately to drive innovation. One has to do many things, but also it means in part bringing, for example, products to market. It means exploiting intellectual property in its various forms, and all these are regulated activities. And I think we need to find ways how to do that at a global level. And again, I think the United Nations is the proper forum for that. But that process has a long way to go. So I think we have to recognize the wonderful contribution the United Nations makes. However, we need to recognize also that then needs policy drive. So thank you indeed for sharing these wonderful aspects with us, and we look forward to further engagement in hopefully September next year. So now I am delighted to welcome himself, Dr. Joseph Torman, the person responsible for bringing us all here together today. And you will know he's the Managing Director of ASREN based in Jordan. And Dr. Torman will speak to us on the subject of ASREN's strategy on science engagement. Dr. Torman, the screen is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, and glad to be again with you all. And Declan, thank you for the wonderful sharing. And let me share my screen to avoid wasting your time. So I'm trying to share my screen. I hope you can see it. Oh, stop sharing one more. It's happening. Okay, let me share again. So this is my slides. I hope you can see them, and it's now, it should be in full screen mode. I hope you see my slides now.
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, good. So I'm proud with the conference that we are organizing, with the distinguished speakers that we are hosting in our event. Fortunately, that it's online, so that we can more participation. But hopefully next time it will be face to face to further discuss and take concrete steps based on concrete discussions and so on. Because here we present and we try to follow up by emails. But anyways, so welcome to the platform e-AGE21, which is more than a conference. But for I will be speaking about our strategy on science engagement and so on. But I'm sharing this slide, which actually exactly describes our strategy. This is the organization of the conference. So we have 3 days based on our strategy. So if you see, the first day is dedicated for high-level opening and the grand opening with political participation and high-level. And it was, we had a 3-hour session in opening, which was planned for 2 hours. So the discussion was great and the contribution from all partners. We have speakers from all the continents yesterday in the opening with high level and representation from the European Commission, Regional Research and Education Network, and so on. On the second day, you can see now where is our strategy. We have 2 sessions. This session, which we are talking about Arab science cooperation, and the second session, it's about science communities and endurance where they can collaborate. And the third day is dedicated for science in terms of open science and open science platforms. And so I think you can read our strategy from this slide and from the organization of this conference. However, I have a lengthy slide deck, which I will, my colleagues will share on the website, on the event website for people to reference to go to. But I will quickly go to what is ASREN. ASREN is the Regional Research and Education Network for the Arab region. We focus on establishing the pan-Arab infrastructure, but the next step for our focus is to how this infrastructure can be best utilized to achieve the results of research and education to the community, to the benefit of mankind, to the benefit of life of people, to the economy, and so on. So this is our main objective, and so on. I will avoid these linked slides, but they are for the sake of reference. They will be available for those. ASREN, we are proud that ASREN region is evolving. We have a lot of entrants now are at the maturity level. There are even some entrants provide services to ASREN and support to ASREN. So we are proud of this combination of entrants in our region. We are partnering with the world, as I used to say. So you can see we have partners from all over the world. We have membership of various organizations, ITU, We are partners with the European Commission. We are partners with Sesame, for example, Internet Society, and more, much more. So we have our main areas of intervention. Mainly, the initial goal is to have provide dedicated services through dedicated networks, research and education networks. We work also on research and education services, educational roaming, edu-roam, federated access, cloud service to the communities, and so on. We work on science cooperation. We work on community engagement, scientific computing, internet access, security, and governance. Which we are intervening with all these activities. Quickly, this is GEANT. I think I cannot avoid putting this slide in all my presentations because they are I think they are the leader in terms of research and education services in the world. And the good thing that they are supported by the European Commission through various projects to interconnect with all other regionals, with most of the regional research and education networks around the world. ASREN is among them. We have our partner organizations also from all over the world connected here also. At ASREN, we are sending a call for entrants to take, when I say entrants, National Research and Education Network, I mean. And we always send the call. I take these slides with me to all events I participate in, to encourage entrants to take their stake in the responsibility and look at the global observations. What are the trends now, the priorities, for example, climate actions, healthcare, internet governance, and so on. So from there are many activities that entrants can be a stakeholder or provider or intervener or coordinator, and they can do any kind of role to achieving these. So, for example, the United Nations SDGs. So entrants can, for example, they can promote and raise awareness of the importance of SDGs as a priority for decision makers, students, research, and academics. They can provide or explore means and tools towards achieving these goals, and we are doing that. I will come to this further later. We can share and exchange knowledge and experience and the practices between various entrants on how they can support each other to achieving these goals and so on. Promote also science as an instrument for development and communities, which will be exactly what we are doing now at ASREN, and I believe that GEANT is doing the same, and Red, Clara are doing the same. Open science and open access, open education resources. Now we are in deep discussion with UNESCO to see how we can work together in promoting UNESCO's recommendation on open science. Further to that, we have signed an agreement with the League of Arab, with the Association of Arab Universities, to work together in promoting open science and take it further to support what we call the developing a national roadmap towards the open science and so on. We are also working on a regional harvester in cooperation with Latin Americans, La Francia, which is a software that enables harvesting open data repositories and so on. So we are in the process of open science and open access and open education resources also. Open science platforms, as I said, we are conducting heavy tests with our colleagues in Latin America to use their harvesting infrastructure. We will be adapting this as a pilot for Arab Open Science Platform or Arab States Open Science Cloud, which we are working together with various stakeholders to take it to the reality, following the European Open Science Cloud model, to which we are observer now, and so on. We are proud also with our cooperation with our sister organization in Africa under the Africa Connect 3. We have a LipSense project, which is a project that supports integrating open data repositories in the Africa region, developing capacities, and also working on policies and so on. more and more. So we are doing also what we call engagement with science communities. We work with science communities to promote the technology for them to use this technology that we provide, either through the connectivity or the service that we provide, so that they can work together in achieving better to achieve the SDGs with various services that we provide. I will not go through the services for now. Very quickly, we are also loyal to the European Commission to support us through the UMID Connect and Africa Connect 3 project, which was, especially Africa Connect 3 was a very important instrument for us to get more engaged with science communities. This is the list of work packages, but I was only want to list what we are doing to enable science cooperation. What we will do to enable science cooperation through Africa Connect 3 to provide connectivity between research and education communities, providing with mobility services, namely the educational roaming, federation of identity and access also, to provide them with cloud infrastructure. At ASREN, we started our pilot of cloud infrastructure, and we started providing cloud technology services, virtual machines to our communities. Again, LibSense, I cannot avoid mentioning LibSense all the time. And engagement with science communities. What we are doing now, we are discussing with the various communities in Africa, especially, but also for the region, our region, Africa Geo Group on Earth Observation, Global Monitoring and Environment Security, African Radio Astronomy Partnership, which we are discussing, coordinating with its chairman, Mr. Declan. Digital Earth Africa, African Strategy for Fundamental and Applied Physics. We are identifying now climate research and education communities, African synchrotron community in coordination with Sesame, and more. We will try to identify their needs and see how we can support them through a survey, which I will not take your time on the details of the survey, but the ultimate goal of the survey is to identify exactly what are their needs and see how we can provide them through enhancing our infrastructure and enhancing our cloud services, and also bringing them to the open science area. For the, if you see from my previous slides and for the SDGs, I think we can be everywhere in terms of research and education networks. I know there is a need for a focus, but the focus will come from the research communities that we are working with. So we are identifying some communities, which I will come very quickly. Let me quickly now see what some activities that we have been conducting. We have contributed and participated in the COP26, like the Euro Climate and COP26 last November, with the presentation and contribution from ASREN, GEANT, and Red Clara. And we are taking that further action that will be presented in the next session today, will be presented by colleague Chris Atherton. We also have I would like to also to thank Declan here to facilitate a session for ASREN at the Science Summit at the United Nations Global General Assembly 76, and we are planning for the 77th next year in September. And as Declan facilitated, and he invited us also to be there to see how we can take that further. We have also contributed last week to the Internet Governance Forum with the session on exchanging research data responsible to save the planet. The focus was on climate. Now I can say specific SDG, which is the SDG related to climate, for example. This is another one for LibSense. We are participating in Brasilia, also invited by Luis. He is with us today, so I thank him to that he allowed us also to speak in their platform. Internet Society was last week, also 2 weeks before, and we presented the same issue. And we'll have next week a dedicated session in the Arab Digital Cooperation Forum. We will be speaking also on the role of research and education networks to achieve the United Nations SDGs. I think I conclude with the triangle. This slide is not by me. It's a slide by my colleague and friend Luis Cadenas. He's the CEO of Red Clara. It's the science triangle between Europe, between Africa, and Latin America, and we are part of it also. Thank you. I'm sorry if I was too long. I tried to be short.
Thank you very much, Dr. Torman. That was a really elucidating presentation. Congratulations on your achievements and more particularly your visions for the future. And indeed, we hope to see you as the convener for Arab nations at the Science Summit at the United Nations General Assembly 77 in September 2022. Thank you very much, Dr. Torman. I now would like to turn to Andrea Laosi, Science Director at Sesame in Jordan, who will address us on the topic of data policy at Sesame. Dr. Laosi, the screen is yours.
No. Don't push this button.
Famous last words. Yeah.
If we have a problem, Declan, I don't mind jumping ahead.
Yeah, just I'll ask Dr.
He should not have a problem. He tested his presentation and slides before the session, so I'm afraid he's just pushing the wrong button. Andrea, if you...
Something seems to be happening. What do you think, Joseph? Should we move along and come back to him?
Go to the next, please.
Thank you. I'd now like to turn to Dr. Hendrik Ike, Public Affairs Officer at GEANT in the Netherlands, who will talk to us on the topic of GEANT, and the Sustainable Development Goals. Hendrik, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much. Sadly, I'm not as steamed as some others on this panel. I'm not a doctor, but
Not yet. Not yet.
not yet. I'll do my best. 1 second. Can you see PowerPoint?
Not yet, but maybe it's about to appear.
Okay. Well, if not, I can share my entire screen and bring the PowerPoint up. Is that, can you see the PowerPoint now?
No.
Odd. Still nothing coming?
Not yet. No, I think that.
Okay, I have a quick solution. I can go into Chrome. It should be about 20 seconds. I think it should work in that then. Into Safari, sorry. I'll be right back.
Well, for the last option, I can jump in. I hope.
We should warn him. So if you don't go into 2 minutes, then you will go to the next.
Right.
Hendrik is back. We can see you, Hendrik. Hello, Hendrik. You can hear us?
Probably relates to some of the permissions that Hendrik has on his computer. Like if he uses a Mac, he needs to give the permission for the screen recording, most probably.
From our end, both Andrea and Hendrik did a test before the session starts.
Oh,
maybe I don't know what's wrong. Don't know. I'll come back. So if okay, why don't you give the floor to Louis?
Very good, very good. Well, in which case we will turn to Luis Ari Messina, Brazilian National Coordinator of the Telemedicine University Network, RUTE, and the Brazilian National Research Education Network, RNP, in Brazil. Luis is going to talk to us on the topic of constructing health collaborative network for research dissemination. Luis, the screen is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. I hope I can share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so my intention and position for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals is to go through planning, searching for investments, constructing, sustaining, and evolving collaborative networks. As we can see in the digital health scenery, it is forcing new capacity. It is already proving collaborative research and remote assistance, achieving then the universal health coverage. And I'll go into some of them, some of the SDGs. If we look at Brazil, which is a very big country and with many remote, underserved areas.
Okay, here I am.
Can you hear me?
Let's see what happens now.
Hello?
Oh,
Louis,
Should I continue? Should I continue?
Please do, yes.
Do you see, are the slides changing also?
Try it now.
Okay. So our National Research and Education Network, RNP, is directly connected to our Science, Technology and Innovation Ministry, but also receives support from our Education Ministry, Health Ministry, Defense and Tourism, because under the tourism is our Culture Secretary. And in this respect, for such a big country, it is very difficult to get everywhere. And when we look at the health aspects, we do not have physicians everywhere. No way. And we will never have the specialists everywhere. So telemedicine seemed already 20 years ago when we started a very good solution. So our ASREN came already for 30 years, connecting the 27 state capitals, as you can see here. And then PAP, it started going into the country, and we connect now more than 800 municipalities in the country. We are 5,750 municipalities, and 800 of them are already connected through our ASREN, connecting almost 900 900 organizations, this including mainly universities and university campus in the interior. And then we started building networks, research and education communitarian networks in every state capital, every 21 of the 27 state capitals. We are now in already 39 communitarian networks in the state capitals and big cities. And this is enlarging. And the big challenge that we have now is to have partnership with all the states and also the main municipalities to share the network, the fiber optics, with the state government and the municipal government, where they can use separate fibers or logically separated. And in this case here in Manaus, we are already connecting through treatments with the state government, some organizations from the state government, besides universities and research institutes. So 39 are in operation all over Brazil, and 24 are in construction, giving an amount of 3,000 kilometers and connecting only in these communitarian networks 500 institutions. In 2006, we started phase 1 of our telemedicine university network, which was a very good name chosen at the beginning from our general director of RNP to focus the eyes of the health community to telemedicine and telehealth. But in fact, it is a health collaborative network involving all the specialties. We started with 19 university and teaching hospitals. They were not good connected. Most of the great majority of the university and teaching hospitals in 2006 and up to 2010 were not very good connected. So this was a very good option to connect with fiber optics directly these hospitals and implanting what we call a telehealth unit in each one of these hospitals to give support to the municipalities. Then at phase 2, 45 more, and then phase 3, 75, reaching all the state teaching hospitals. So, and when we look the whole country, the Brazilian national telehealth public policy, although we do not have yet a national telehealth policy, but this is a very big initiative, so we call it a public policy. And looking at these big 3 programs, the program Telehealth Brazil Networks and UNASUS, the Open Health University, with resources from our Ministry of Health, and RUCI with resources from our Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovations. So we integrated all these 3 projects, not as well as I wished, but anyway, as the Telehealth Brazil Networks was started the construction 1 year after the Telemedicine University Network, they used the RUCI units to as a support, as they are complex hospitals, university hospitals. They could give support to the municipalities. So this stage was then achieved, and 24 implanted nuclei in 27 states, reaching 2,300, more than 2,000 municipalities. But then we had a break. You know, we had impeachment in 2016, and so that this public policy was sort of neglected, unfortunately. So we lost some of these complex telehealth units because we lost the investment. But we continued at RUCI. We continued with the investments in RUCI from the Ministry of Science and Technology, so that we were able to reach the 140 university and teaching hospitals. And also we started building special interest groups in health specialties and subspecialties, so that since 2014 about, we have every day 2 to 3 scientific sessions discussing important cases. And with a very good participation, we have some groups here that have more than 100 institutions participating. But then we have also some of these groups which have only 5, 6, 10 institutions participating. So it is a general and national effort to bring this concept of collaborative networks to the whole country. And I believe this is reaching many, many municipalities also. As we have, as an example here, the Human Milk Bank, which also support Latin American countries and also Portuguese-speaking countries, not only in respect to telehealth and remote assistance, but also helping in these countries, helping them to build better maternities for using human milk banks for the newborns. And as you can, sorry that it's in Portuguese, but you know, vascular cerebral accidents, pathologic obstetricia, indigenous health, phonoaudiology, psychiatry and mental health, nursing, health economy, pharmacology, oncopediatry, and many, many others, around 60 special interest groups. So this is running very well, and we can say that we achieved a high level of existence in this collaborative network. So that when we started COVID, the pandemic started, we started this special interest group on COVID, and we had a collaboration of many countries in the world. Sorry, more than 3,000 participants and speakers from 14 states and more than 14 countries, including Finland, Italy, United Kingdom, Germany, Russia, China, India, Mexico, US, Japan, Mexico, and so on. We had sessions every week, starting in March 2020. And we had 100 to 130 health professionals participating in each one every week. So this was a big effort to bring this knowledge to the health professionals. And it worked very well until the first semester of this year. Although in this year, 2021, we had not more weekly sessions, but monthly sessions. And at the moment, it is stopped. I hope we can really stop it now and not have the pandemic anymore. Regarding health assistant, remote assistance directly to the patients, we had a law here since 2002 that did not allow a doctor to assist remotely and directly the patient. There must be a doctor close to the patient before it could be assisted. So it was a second opinion, conducted between two doctors assisting one patient. And this run since 2005, 2006 in the state of Minas Gerais, because they also participated in European Union projects when GEANT also created Red Clara in the project Alliance for the Information Society, started in 2003 until 2006. And I had also the opportunity to coordinate a telemed project in this European Union program. And this is also why I coordinate RUCI since the beginning in 2006. And the state of Minas Gerais participated in one of these projects with the European Union. And also, not only the state health department, but also the municipal health department of Belo Horizonte. And this is how they reached to have more than 800 municipalities only in the state of Minas Gerais. But because they received federal investments, national investments from the Ministry of Health through the Telehealth program, national, to reach first 200 municipalities, then 300, 400, and with investments from the state of Minas Gerais, they went on and reached 800 municipalities. The focus here was on electrocardiograms, second opinion on electrocardiograms, but then they went on and on to many other specialties. This is not the only state. We have around 6 out of the 27, just only 6, which receive resources, investments from the state. And this is how they can achieve, as the state of Santa Catarina also in the south, reached all 257 municipalities, all municipalities in the state. And their focus was on teledermatology. Okay, most of the inhabitants of this state have an European origin, Italian, German, and with very clear white skin, and dermatology was the main focus. As you can see here, 80% of the tele-patients need not be transferred to reference centers in teaching and university hospitals, and between 10 to 15% of the municipal health budgets could be saved. We have a good collaboration with the Portuguese-speaking countries, and we approved at the CPLP in Lisbon, the Commission of the Portuguese-speaking countries, a telehealth strategy for these countries. And all 9 ministries signed a resolution creating this permanent working group in telemedicine. And because of the facility of the language, but we have also the problem of the time difference. But anyway, at least it is the same language, which facilitates. And there are some new special interest groups as CITO Technology, which runs mainly in the Portuguese-speaking countries to train personnel for cytopathologies in using technology. Portugal, Brazil, and Cape Verde had already a national program on telehealth. And after starting this permanent working group, Mozambique in 2018 started also their national telehealth program from the Ministry of Health. In Latin America, we are through Rede Clara, the Latin American Cooperation of Advanced Networks in Latin America. We are expanding RUTE to Latin America, and we launched already RUTE Chile, RUTE Colombia, and RUTE Ecuador, and soon Mexico, Argentina, and Guatemala, all in the National Research and Education Network, which gives us certain compromise to sustainability. And the first proposed SIGs to Latin America are child and adolescent health, which is the oldest SIG. They have more than 130 virtual sessions already. They started in 2008, pediatrics, endocrinology, and indigenous health. We achieved it to approve in our Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation what is here called a priority program of national interest on digital health, which will allow us, was just approved, which allow us to give a better impulse to research projects using the technological committee on digital health prospection. We already have with the computer scientists and the health professional scientists in our community in many of these lists of research items. This is we have a bigger list now, which will be published in February. We are in the final revision phase now. And this comes with this priority program, comes with money from the industry here in Brazil that produces ICT equipments, and medical and odontological and health equipment. They will receive credits to give this money to enlarge the health research community using ICTs. So this, I believe really seriously that this will bring us a big step forward. And we are also very glad because the World Health Organization recognized RUTE as an example of collaborative network in the digital health platform in 2020. So we are working closely to PAHO and the Pan American Health Organization and World Health Organization. As Youssef just said, and thank you, Youssef, for the invitation and ASREN for the possibility. We just had this human capacity building and digital health in focus event, and we achieved it to bring together our national research and education together with the Brazilian Association of Telemedicine and Telehealth, which I am at the moment the president, and the Brazilian Society for Health Informatics, which have never had a common event. And it was really a big event with more than 1,500 registered participants. And in the sessions, we had more than 5,000 participants in the event that just happened. So our proposal is to plan, to invest, construct, maintain or sustain, and evolve through research, through new investments in research, what we call the collaborative digital health networks. And so the contribution of the academic network to business with a socio-economic impact and the 2030 agenda can be much higher than we could expect. We already give our points to 8 of the 17 SDGs. And thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you indeed, Dr. Messina, for this comprehensive overview. And I think it nicely illustrates the global nature and aspect of what we were discussing today. Of course, the challenges in delivering healthcare are local, since people are, but of course the enabling environment is, as we've learned today, is part of is a globally relevant in terms of capacity and infrastructure. Thank you indeed. I'd now like to turn to Dr. Andrea Laosi, Science Director at Sesame in Jordan, who will talk to us on the subject of data policy at Sesame. Dr. Laosi, the screen is yours.
Thank you. Do you hear me?
Loud and clear, thank you.
Okay, so there are still some problems in IT world which can be solved by restarting your device, which is nice. Now, second step is, let's see if I can share the screen. Yes, it seems very much different from before. Window. Okay, where is it? Aha, must stay on the same screen. Okay, let's see like this. Yes. Share and full screen. Do you see it full screen now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so everything on. Thank you for inviting me, and I will give some ideas of how Sesame is used by the scientists who are coming here or sending their samples here, and the kind of challenge that this poses on the IT infrastructure and how we are going to solve it in the future. So just to remember, to set the scene, Sesame is a synchrotron radiation source, which means that we are using accelerated electrons, which are accelerated perpendicular to their velocity, to generate electromagnetic radiation, which is called synchrotron light or synchrotron radiation, to study matter, essentially. So the most striking and most important property of synchrotron radiation is that it covers a very wide range of wavelengths. It goes from infrared to hard X-rays. And so it puts itself in competition with the laboratory sources over a very wide spectrum of experiments that you can do on matter. And the other properties ensure you that the gain moving from laboratory source to a synchrotron is always extremely large. So not only it is very wide, but it is also a very it's a collimated source, so it allows you to put a lot of energy in a very tiny spot, which is very handy if you want to observe samples, and also other things like a time structure, stability can be computed. So you can foresee how many photons you are going to send on a sample in a determinate moment. And all facilities, there are around 50 facilities around the world, they are made more or less like this. There is an injection system, a main ring, and a insertion devices. So you can change the characteristics of the radiation emitted in many ways, changing the magnetic structure which provide this acceleration perpendicular to the velocity, which generates the light, the radiation. Secondary radiation sources are communities. So the collaboration, international collaboration in particular is the key word in our world, because first of all, no country has the know-how alone to build one. There is a community around which is moving from among these sources, building the sources, building the beamlines, bringing the new laboratories, and also the beamline scientists are moving from one source to the other, and the users are an international group of people. Now, this slide here, I put it essentially for two purposes: to show that Sesame is a really young, and it's a facility in its infancy yet. So it was opened in 2017, and the first beam was used in 2018. So, and then we know what happened in 2020. So it's really very, very young. And on the other side, to show that it attracted, and it still attracts, the interest of many players on the global scene. In science, you can see it here. 3 director generals of CERN, the president and the 2 former, and the EU commissioner for science, the director general of UNESCO, together with the king, the princess, and some of the directors of Sesame. So this is Sesame now. It has 3 beamlines working, 2 beamlines in construction, and the third and the fourth, which will come in the next years. It is a relatively small ring, 133 meters only in circumference, but with a medium energy, which allows us to go up to hard X-ray quite easily. And we have 3 beamlines operative and 3 beamlines under construction. So these 3 beamlines in operation have received already between 300 and 400 new proposals, and so that are being have been selected, ranked, and more or less half of them have been accepted and are being performed. And the 3 beamline under constructions instead are international cooperations with both Europe and Turkey, which is one of the members of Sesame. In particular, I'm very happy of TechSpace because it's the very first beamline which is built by one of the members of Sesame, and will be a new business model, let's say. All the others are Sesame beamlines. This one will be shared 50-50 with the Turkish scientists, which are providing it. So I will skip very rapidly about the description of the beamlines. There is no time now to do that, but just to point out the diversity of potential examples that can be treated with the techniques available at Sesame. So there is an infrared spectrum microscopy beamline, which can be used for getting the chemistry of your samples, any kind of samples. And there is a EXAFS beamline. EXAFS is a technique which allows you to have structural information at atomic level, even if you don't have a crystal. You know, crystallography is the normal way of obtaining these kind of structures, but if your sample is not ordered enough, you don't have, you cannot use it. So in that cases, you can still get an EXAFS signal analyzed and get the position of the atoms inside the sample. And also this has many advantages and can be applied for very many different samples. And powder diffraction, which is the last one, entered in operation. Well, powder diffraction, we all know it. It's a primer technique to have structural informations at the atomic level, nanoscale, and microscale, depending on which characteristics of the pattern you are looking at. So it's a very powerful technique. It's very, in a way, simple to use because you always have diffracted peaks everywhere, and you can go and have magnificent results out of it. It was opened in December 2020, and the first paper appeared already in the spring of 2021. Under construction, very advanced, will be installed next year. The tomography beamline, this will be a game changer for the region because it will be the first computer tomography beamline in the region, and it will allow imaging, non-destructive analysis on very many samples, and in particular, I would stress on in the field of cultural heritage, where being non-destructive is of paramount importance. Then, in January, we are starting installing the January 2022. Some boxes are already arrived. This beamline, which has been built in Germany, and will be the first beamline in the soft X-ray regime. It will host a chamber for fluorescence analysis at the end in the soft X-ray. So a lot of chemical information because you are touching the L edges of elements. So you are getting information on the electrons which are involved in the chemical bonds. And it will also allow here the insertion of another beamline, which is text-based, which will be a full-fledged photoelectron spectroscopy beamline. So for doing analysis of the chemistry of surfaces. A macromolecular crystallography beamline is under design and might be like this, or we will have a workshop during next spring in order to understand if it is possible to build a mixed instrument which can do MX beamline on one branch with also a second branch for a small angle scattering beamline, which could be of extreme interest for the scientists of the region. So what happens in a synchrotron normally is that people comes here and is hosted in our guest house, which was a gift from the Italian government, and go to the beamline, prepare the samples, mount the sample with the scientists, understand how to make the measurement. And since many of these techniques are not so familiar in the region yet, at least in this stage, it is very important that our beamline scientists start together with the users to analyze the data. This is an old slide because then COVID arrived, and as you can imagine, this guest house remained completely empty, and we resorted to what is called mail-in, where we received the samples by post. It's not ideal, but can be done, and we survived through the pandemic in this way. And I must say, thank you also very much to the efforts of the IT group, without whom it would have not be possible to cope with the pandemic. Sesame is growing in terms of published papers. We have at the moment 37 papers. As you can see here, what is the huge difference between having, when you turn it on, it works definitely better when you turn it on. So this is the increase of publications after starting the actual work at the beamline. Impact factor is quite reasonable, and more or less all beamlines are at the moment publishing within the higher 40% of impact factor in their respective fields. So, as you think, I think you have seen, there are very many different kind of samples of measurements and of experiments that can be done, which means that there will be also very many kinds of data to be treated of very many different kinds at Sesame. And this, if on one side gives us the possibility to cooperate into the effort for a large number of goals in the SGD effort. Here it's, I divided by life sciences, material science and physics, chemical sciences, and heritage sciences plus education, because we are also a training center, or I'm very much pushing the capabilities of Sesame as a training center. There is a school on synchrotron radiation which is made just in these days in online and hosted by the International Center of Theoretical Physics in Trieste. On the other side, these kind of experiments are becoming more and more demanding from the point of view of data treatment and how you can store it and how you can transfer it. So if you are producing tens of gigabytes per day, it's clear that it's time to find new ways of answering this wave of data, this overwhelming wave of data which is coming. So their data sets are definitely too large now to be taken home, and new strategies are being implemented in order to cope with this. On top of that, we are applying a data policy which will allow to attach metadata to the data in order to allow reusability and indexability of the data, because what our product, so the effort of Sesame, is to produce scientific data, and this is a treasure that has to be preserved and reused. So how are we coping with that? The Sesame IT group is in charge of putting in place an infrastructure which will allow to transfer the data and to storage the data and attach the metadata, and on the same time also on a different path to produce the data from remote, because for many cases it will be a good policy to still allow users to stay at home and send just the samples. So, for example, for powder diffraction, an average measurement takes 5 minutes. So if the user sends us a capillary with the sample inside, it's no use of we have to reduce the carbon footprint and have him measure from home in remote with no machine. All this, it's putting a big effort on the staff of the IT sector. So just pointed out here that there is an experimental data engineer position which is open now, and we hope to fill it as soon as possible. And also there are, Sesame is a member of this ENGAGE initiative, which is a project funded by the European Union for 20 PhD positions. 2 of them are for Sesame. So for coming here, working with our IT group, and at the end, having a PhD. So this is all that I wanted to say, and I thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much, Andrea. That was very comprehensive and informative. And congratulations on such wonderful achievements at Sesame. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Hendrik e-AGE, Public Affairs Director at GEANT in the Netherlands, to address us on the topic of GEANT and the Sustainable Development Goals. Hendrik, the screen is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Right. Step 1 complete. I'm happy about that.
Good.
Right. Let's try with the presentation.
Yes.
You should see. Where are we? Can you see that?
We can. I can anyway. I hope everyone else can.
Good. Well,
yes.
That's a relief. Thanks, everyone. Yes, my name is Hendrik e-AGE. I work as a public affairs officer here at GEANT, the European e-infrastructure for networking and network services. And I know we're running kind of a bit over time, so I'll try not to go on too long. I only want to talk about 4 things today, and that's a brief introduction to GEANT, sustainability and digital policy, where we are with the SDGs, and also where we are at the moment and where we wish to go. So briefly, the GEANT Association, as we're around such familiar colleagues, we're similar to Red Clara, where Louise works, and also Joseph at ASREN. We're a collaboration of NRENs, and GEANT is the European Association of NRENs, and we support the advancement of research, education, and innovation at a global scale. Together, we deliver an information ecosystem of infrastructures and services used for communication, collaboration, the exchange of data, and access to repositories, services, and facilities. Brief overview of our membership map. As you can see, our members come from all over Europe, and perhaps the nicest takeaway from this slide is, whilst we receive a lot of support from the European Commission, our membership association itself is not a political organization, and we therefore have members from outside of the European Union as well, such as Turkey or Switzerland. Yusuf, thank you very much for showing this slide earlier. It's always nice to see it in other presentations, but indeed, we're a European association, but through projects or partnerships, we have connectivity and reciprocal arrangements globally with other research entities and associations. And now is the time to probably get to the heart of what the session is supposed to tackle. I want to take us towards the Sustainable Development Goals, but first I'll pay homage to currently the status of sustainability in light of digital policy in Europe, because I'm not from a scientific background, I'm more from a policy-based background, and it's probably useful to see where Europe is from a policy point of view and how the SDGs are being aligned to policy at the European level, and how GEANT and NRENs are trying to help. So for us, whilst the SDGs are for a wide set of initiatives, it's not just greening or climate change challenges. What we've found from a policy point of view is whenever we talk about sustainability, at the heart of that is efforts to reduce carbon emissions. And the landmark policy was probably July last year, when the Commission adopted a set of proposals to make the EU's climate, energy, transport, taxation policies fit for reducing net greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2030. And these are needed in order for Europe to become the world's first climate neutral continent by 2050. We hope and we aim to strive towards that goal. But where NRENs and GEANT comes in is that we're seeing that the green agenda is being closely linked with the digital transformation taking place in Europe. And Europe must leverage the potential digital transformation, which is a key enabler for reaching Green Deal objectives. And I'll give an example of that further down the road. But the Commission has promoted digital transformation to enhance economic competitiveness, while also recognizing that digitization can contribute to sustainability goals. And they're seen as hand in hand. Digital economic policy and the green transition can't be unlinked in the Commission's eyes. So to get closer towards data, last year we had the release of the European Strategy for Data, and this is to create a single European data space. We can also conceptualize that as a data lake, which we'll see in the next slide. But the idea from the Commission is to create a genuine single market for data, which is for where personal as well as non-personal data, including confidential data, is secure. And that's going to make it easier for businesses and public authorities to have data at their disposals in order to boost growth and create value in Europe. And the idea of this, and I'll go straight to the final bullet, is that a part of this strategy in one section is the Data Governance Act, and the Council of the European Union and Parliament have just come to an agreement on that piece of legislation. And what this is aiming to do is create this type of environment. We've known about it for a year, but the European Commission have talked about a lake, European data lake, and from this I'm talking about a data lake from a policy perspective, not a scientific one. Unfortunately, terms often get reused or used in different contexts according to which stakeholders you're talking to, but this is the Commission's lake. And they envisage the start of several clouds. So of course we have the European Open Science Cloud and national private and public data. They are already there in terms of the national level, but also at the European level. They've been around for quite a while now. But what we're seeing is the Commission is aiming to introduce 9 common European data spaces. And as you slowly see them fill in the lake, these spaces are designed to combine public and private data in a hybrid sense. And for sustainability, and this is the work that Chris Atherton, my colleague, does, the most relevant area is the Green Deal data space. And it's also the area where GEANT is currently most active, because this is really at the intersection of Earth observation data, Copernicus data, and trying to see how that can enable the concept of a digital twin. So in other words, a real life, real-time replicating model of the Earth's surface, at least. These are just some of the aspirations that the Commission has. But what's a struggle at the moment is that the rules surrounding, okay, what makes data private or public? How is it accessible? What if we're going to have a scenario where universities were putting research data into such a space and businesses could have such data, and it would, there are lots of ethical questions which still need to be ironed out. And especially if we don't want our researchers and academic users to have their data taken unfairly, in a sense. So these are the conversations we're having with the Commission, and it's interesting to try and scope out the rules around ethics in this area. But where are we at the moment? So GEANT, the Sustainable Development Goals, GEANT, the community of NRENs behind it, are being included, and this is kind of from the Commission's point of view as part of the solution to current and future societal challenges facing Europe. And with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, they've become a benchmark to strive towards a better world. I think we know this all. And our activities, while supportive of many of the 17 goals, can be closely matched to certain goals. And I'll briefly, very briefly, just go through 3 different areas, but we're actually working on a wider report which will be released next year in terms of how GEANT and its members, we're still trying to figure out the right balance here, contribute to the goals, but I'll go into that a bit later. And just before I start on SDG number 1, Unlike Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe, which is the future of the type of funding that we will be involved with from the Commission point of view, this now has the Sustainable Development Goals written into the regulation. So the activities we do are designed to help Europe contribute to these goals. Very briefly, so quality education, SG4, we've started our mapping exercises. It goes into more granularity than this, especially when we're mapping to actions, but we like to use examples in this scenario, such as trust and identity services, such as EduRoam and EduGain, 10,000 EduRoam hotspots available at universities, research centers, academies, and schools. More than 100 territories around the world. EduRoam is growing to more and more hotspots globally. And this includes additional places such as libraries, museums, and public spaces. So EduRoam is essentially a way of maintaining a student identity and using the Wi-Fi roaming services to have access to the internet, and it's free of charge to researchers and students. This was originally set up by a group of NRENs in Europe, but there's now a separate EduRoam governance, and it's a global phenomenon. SDG 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Purely the work that we do from the network point of view enables European researchers to collaborate and use high-intensive research to meet their research needs. And this contributes to the global science economy worldwide. But there are also more specific research infrastructures that we help. We already connect Europe's high-performance computing centers. We also will be providing future connectivity to ITER, which is the world's largest nuclear fusion project in southern France. And another example is we connect researchers to CERN, which doesn't need much of an explanation, but that's the largest particle physics laboratory in the world. But I think for GEANT and its members, the most useful thing we often provide is not just the services and the communities or the NRENs who come together to provide these services, but it's about our story and it's about our history, and it's how we've managed over time through collaboration to create strong and stable partnerships that are funded both by NRENs and their respective ministries, but also the European Commission. These partnerships go beyond Europe, though, of course, and Yusuf already highlighted them in his map. You can see the global partnerships there in the second bullet point. But these projects really help to bridge the digital divide across different territorial regions. This association, so the GEANT Association, has been formed by an opt-in, consensus-driven approach at our General Assembly. All members have a say, and it's grown slowly but in a very stable way. It's been GEANT since 2013-14, but before then we had our two separate communities, Dante and Terena, who were both also had full NREN membership models. So there's a bit of history behind this community, and I'm very proud to work in it. If we're going further beyond what I just mentioned, so reciprocity of service provision, i.e. if we give you this, then you will give us back. It's based on a trust-based approach. And I think for global collaboration especially, you need trust. Trust is the foundation of what makes us feel like a global community. And I'm very happy to see it in my daily work. And we have the General Assembly, which I've already mentioned. So where we wish to go? Aligning GEANT's work with the Sustainable Development Goals, and at the moment I'm talking purely about GEANT, not the NRENs. There's some overlap, but I can't talk for the NRENs. But what we're doing within GEANT as the organization is about 2 years ago, we started mapping our activities to the different SDGs. This had already happened in some of our international projects and partnerships, but we're now doing it within Europe. And we're now mapping and aligning the activities, not just to the SDGs, but to the subsequent actions. So really trying to get to that deep level of granularity there. But there are challenges, and identifying and baselining our current activities is the first step in order to locate gaps in where we can be more sustainable or fulfill the actions of the goals. And it's also become quickly apparent that the need to ascertain what is and is not within our power to control is vital. So I'll use a very brief example here. we're currently trying to understand what we can do to make the GEANT network itself, so the physical leased or owned network in Europe, more green, with less carbon emissions. But we have some quite simple starting points. So we're currently in the process of shifting from estimating how much energy the network uses to getting towards the level of calculation, and we hope eventually measurement. So it sounds like a simple enough exercise, but it's actually quite challenging. We have different types of equipment and switches which may or may not give live energy readings or reports, be that at the end of the week or at the end of the month. And some pieces of equipment require someone to go to the site in person and read the reading, which if we want to have consistent and clear reporting further down the line, that's not really a optimal or sustainable solution for measuring energy. And there are certain areas where GEANT doesn't have much of a say. This is because we're a broad federated membership organization. There are so many layers down the stack in terms of different decision making that if we have, let's use the example of local energy providing for POPs, so points of presence, where our networks go in and out, essentially, of different areas in Europe, we may not be able to say, why don't we use a green energy provider? That's just a simple example. So if we were to have a hypothetical carbon neutral network, what can we do in light of these things? This is my second to last slide, I think. We're starting to discuss everything to do with the SDGs and our corporate social responsibility with our staff. We're baselining our current activities and seeing what we can and cannot do. So, and this is me speaking here purely from someone who's talking to an organization which is becoming more used to interacting with SDG objectives. How staff feel about it? I've noticed there's a high level of enthusiasm to increase sustainability in the organization, but especially towards climate efforts. However, unpopular thing to say, but there is also weariness when we discuss these things of hollow talk, i.e. credible work plans are needed to link objectives to measurement or KPIs. Otherwise, there's just less buy-in from people. I think you'll find that not just in GEANT or in MRENs, but in many different types of organizations. It's okay to say we enable or we do something, but unless you can measure it, then there's less enthusiasm, let's say. Staff also raised that there's acknowledgement that some things are out of influence. We need to therefore discuss what can we do to indirectly influence, say, those points of presence I talked about earlier on energy provision. Is there any way to set standards which we can circulate with our wider community on certain sustainability issues? And also sustainable offsetting, so especially in carbon reduction. How do we do that in a way which is really in the best way we can, I would say, in the areas where we know that we can't cut some form of carbon excess. Final 2 points. Becoming carbon neutral and negative will come at a cost. We will need investment, both from the European Commission and probably from our members at some point when we need to have these discussions, when the work plans are made and the costing is done. That's just inevitable if we're going to keep to that target by 2050. It's a long road. And horizontal collaboration between teams is essential. But I think with this lovely panel I've had the privilege to be on today, I just want to share this final picture, this is the GEANT Project Symposium 2020. You can see 4th and 5th of February in Ljubljana, Slovenia. This was the last time that members in the GEANT project and people who work in there got together. And to me, it feels like a family. And when I talk to Yusuf or Louise, so the wider REN networks, I feel like they're extended family as well. So I'm very much looking forward to when we can truly get back together. And Yusuf, thank you very much for inviting me for this. I hope it was of interest.
Thank you so much, Hendrik. That was fascinating. And congratulations on such a strong global community, which I think has a hugely important role to play, as you've shared with us today. So thank you. So I think that brings us to the end of our discussion this morning, or into afternoon. At least we are in Brussels. We've learned an awful lot. Joseph, just to ask you, will you be sharing a report from this and other sessions this week?
Yes, what we do actually, we provide the report on all over the conference with all activities. But I would be happy to arrange for a special report on this session.
So thank you very much. It was
We
extremely.
can coordinate. I can coordinate this with you together with the speakers if they want to contribute. I will start arranging this, but maybe not very soon.
No, indeed, and no, to my mind, it is both technically and policy-wise extremely rich, and as I said, with an outward perspective, I think there is indeed much information that was shared today that I am convinced the global community can benefit from beyond the stakeholders we would be aware of, if you like, to bring it to a further level of awareness. And particularly then, I think that points to, in my mind, two directions. One is a deeper policymaker engagement on the one hand, and then in the other direction, turning 180 degrees, localized community as well. And I think that's the, if you agree, that I think you got to look both ways really in the world that we are in. And I think many of the points brought forward today, I think illustrate precisely that. But I suppose my mantra in these discussions really is to help everybody understand that since we live in democracies, or at least most of us do, that then we really need to ensure what I call and many others call the enabling policy and regulatory environment. But for that to happen, the inputs from stakeholders need to be very good. And I don't think that's sort of leaving stuff at the front door of policymakers. I think some groups, and again, very worthy groups, aren't necessarily aware that the engagement with policymakers has to be continuous. It's not a stop-start thing. I mean, one has to advance the engagement, create the opportunities for engagement, create the input, but then follow that input, because of course policy making goes through an iterative process. And the other point I think that's vitally important, and I'm not sure if we sufficiently understand it, is we need to distinguish between because if I ask you what's a policymaker, you're going to tell me it's a minister. Now this is true, but they're not the only policymakers. In addition, you have legislators, and of course, a program for a government in any country is a process of a decision making by a legislature, and the legislature, so the science committees and a UK Parliament or an Irish Parliament or any other Parliament are very, very important to engage with as well. But these are much less visible, but they are the guys and girls who vote stuff through. So I think, and again in that, my point earlier on is that effectively there is no global policymaking process. There isn't one. There's a heterogeneous, there's a fragmented process. So how do you do that? I don't pretend to have the answer. Of course, I would argue that the United Nations is absolutely the forum to do that. But again, the inputs there have to be absolutely correct. They absolutely have to be attuned, and I think they absolutely have to be coordinated, for the sake of a better term, so that we can have a homogeneous approach. And this applies to the policymaking process. But again, just to come back to a point I made earlier on, and I think it is entirely still relevant, is the question of regulation. And we've heard some reference to this in the form of data privacy, but this is very, very pervasive, because by and large, we're seeing an advance of regulation in many countries and many forums. But I think there's two very important considerations about this. One is the relationship between these regulations, and very often they're done in isolation. So I think this needs to be considered. And again, this needs to, it can't lead to more fragmentation. It needs to be advanced on a referential scale. And also, what is very much missing in my experience is, as these regulations, and we're talking now about there are others, but we're talking now about the data protection regulation, then we need to ensure that they are understanding the unforeseen and unintended consequences on the work of scientists and the science community globally. The obvious case here is health-related research and such, but there are many others as well. And so this needs really to be discussed at global level at this and other fora. And then the other point is, and again, there are other regulations, and there are many. We have data regulations in the area of medical devices and in vitro diagnostics and clinical trials and broadly the health area. And you can look at these in isolation, but then you have to look at them in tandem because they all impact on one another. The data protection regulation impacts on medical devices, because in the view of a recent commentator, a medical device is essentially a computer. It's an information communications technology. So this is hugely important to understand. And then beyond the health space, there is a raft of regulations in the digital market related to the environment and climate. So again, a very, very important area, and I think this will emerge, I think, as a defining aspect of global collaboration in research. So I think the proceedings today have really informed this process. I think we have as I said, a very rich discussion. And I think those outputs will be extremely valuable, in particular, as Dr. Torman had mentioned, with regard to the United Nations General Assembly in September of next year. And maybe a humble suggestion might be to look at that as a potential next gathering of the good folk here, and really because everyone today has spoken, and I really need to congratulate everybody. We're very much speaking to a global context, and I think that's absolutely vital. But again, it's to do it at global level, it's to do it at local level, and I think demonstrating this to the wider stakeholder community is vitally important. So again, thank you so much to our speakers today. We hope this is just the beginning of an important dialogue, which Dr. Torman will guide us on. So I hand back to him now for a final word. Joseph, the screen is yours.
Allow me before conclude. There are two questions on the chat, on the question and answers. If you would like, maybe they are both from Mark Urban. One of them to Hendrik and the other for Declan. So can you please answer them?
Yeah, so I couldn't hear anything if you were talking to me.
What I said, there are two questions in the questions and answers tab at your right, at the right button. So there is a question from Mark Urban to Hendrik, and another question. If you like me, I can read the question.
Wonderful.
Let me read the question. The question to Hendrik is there a scope for replicating GEANT study models to the other regional RENs?
There's definitely scope. I would like to say that, so is this in terms of us telling our story of how we engage with the SDGs and which areas we've been working in and what we aim to achieve? Because if you want to have a blueprint which is transferable to other RENs or NRENs in single countries, then I think it would be a waste of time to not provide that type of work. But we have quite a lot to do at the start to end of summer next year before we can provide something like that. But yes, is the short answer.
Okay, the other question to Declan from Mark Urban. He said, wouldn't science and research be maybe the easiest environment where together heterogeneous stakeholders? There seems to be cooperation and research between unsuspected partners that would seem be possible elsewhere. I'm sorry for bad reading.
Yeah, I'm just not sure if I got that, man. I'm just scrolling here to see if I can find the question.
It's not in the main chat. It's in the Q&A, Declan. So if you look at the tabs at the top of that orange part, it's the far right. I just found it.
Oh, sorry. Well, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Well, indeed, Mark, if I understand your question, yeah, I mean, I think what you're referring to is what I call the serendipitous nature of these gatherings, and I think it's vitally important. And in the meetings that we've run, and many of them where Dr. Torman has been present, what amazes me is the unforeseen outcomes of these meetings, where potential partners find common cause and work together. So I think there's always merit in promoting those type of forum that are less outcome oriented, but more oriented towards creating dialogue and enabling environment. And from that, then you find these very strong collaboration outcomes. Not sure if that answers your question, Mark, but happy to delve further. Thank you.
So thank you all, and thank you, Declan, for sharing the session, and many thanks to the speakers. You bring a lot to the content, to the quality of the conference, and the calls also, which we are planning and so on. So indeed, all of you, thank you, all of you, one by one. All the speakers were perfect, and we, as Declan said, and actually we do report on everything, and we are also coordinating something together. ASREN and Clara and GEANT, and maybe in another dimension related to climate actions, but also so we will take also the content of this presentation, and if we can capture something from the second session, we will take it like another document report that we can build on all together. Thank you all, and sorry for taking more than planned. But our policy, we don't stop the speaker, because we're inviting him to speak and give all what he has to us. So if you have 2 minutes, I don't like this, because we want to listen to every single slide that he presents. So sorry, it took more than time planned, but it was very useful for all of us, I hope. So we will, for those who can attend the next session, it will start in 30 minutes. So otherwise, thank you all, and see you hopefully soon. Thank you all. Goodbye.
Take care. Thank you.
Goodbye.